I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the White House claims communication isn't frozen with the Palestinians. A shocking new report reveals just how many sex crime cases are shut down in Israeli courts. And we hope you're ready for some man-kini action because British-Israeli comedian Sacha Baron Cohen has just started a troubling international trend. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. The Palestinian Authority is claiming that it has frozen all communications with the United States over the White House's recent threat to close down the PLO's D.C. office. But it looks like the Trump administration is rebuffing that claim, saying that in their view, communications are, quote, not frozen. State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert says that conversations will be taking place and that the White House is in fact in contact with Palestinian officials about the status of that PLO office in Washington. Well, over the weekend, the State Department threatened to close down the PLO office because the Palestinians had violated a U.S. law that forbid them from seeking to prosecute Israelis in the International Criminal Court. The infringement came when Abbas addressed the UN General Assembly in September and then urged the ICC to prosecute Israeli officials for their involvement in settlement activities against the Palestinian people. U.S. President Donald Trump now has 90 days to consider whether or not the Palestinians are in direct and meaningful negotiations with Israel. If he decides that they are, then the PLO can keep the office. Here's the issue, though. PA President Mahmoud Abbas isn't having it. A spokesman for the PLO claims Abbas has ordered the PLO to close down all communication lines with the Americans. Confusing, right? Well, for now, it looks like the PLO office in Washington, D.C. is still open and functioning. Now, the case of the missing Lebanese prime minister has taken another dramatic twist. Weeks after Saad Hariri's sudden resignation amidst accusations that he was forced to do so by Saudi Arabia, Hariri has returned to Lebanon. He's announcing that he will not yet step down as prime minister after all. And here to explain is ILTV's Aaron Poor. So Aaron, why the 180?
It's not exactly clear right at this moment, but if we're going to take all these people at their word, then it would appear Lebanese President Aoun convinced Hariri not to step down after Hariri had returned back to Lebanon, or at least not to step down yet.
Right. Now, and how does this impact Israel?
Well, for one, it means, ideally, the cooling of tensions between Lebanon and regional power in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia. Tensions have been heating up lately with all of the situation that's been going on, and a war, it was seeming as if a war was about to break out, and such a war easily could have dragged Israel into the middle, especially seeing as how, where Israel is geographically, right next to Lebanon, and also the fact that we've been apparently secretly holding cooperative talks with Saudi Arabia and publicly endorsing their fight against Iran and Iranian proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon. But I'll get more into that in my report right now.
لقد عرضت اليوم استقالتي على فخامة الرئيس وقد تمنى علي التريث في تقديمها والاحتفاظ بها لمزيد من التشاور في أسبابها وخلفياتها السياسية فأبديت تجاوب مع هذا التمني.
This reversal is a shocking turn of events irregardless. During his now infamous resignation, he announced that Hezbollah and Iran had infiltrated Lebanon's government and that he feared for his life. Hariri's own father, Rafik, a former prime minister of Lebanon himself, was actually assassinated by Hezbollah for speaking out against the terror group in 2005. That's probably why Hariri made this bombshell announcement while he was in Saudi Arabia, though Lebanon maintains that the reason was because the Saudis were holding him captive. Since then, tensions have been escalating right up to the brink of war between Lebanon and Saudi Arabia. But for Hariri to delay his resignation like this after meeting with Lebanon's president potentially throws everything into even more unpredictable chaos. Meanwhile, Lebanon is rallying troops along the border with Israel, claiming on Twitter that so-called Israeli violations are pushing matters to war. Israel totally denies these allegations. In fact, though Israel does take military action to prevent Hezbollah threats of terror, most agree that neither side are really interested in a fresh conflict at this time.
The family of an Ethiopian Israeli who is being held by Hamas is now in the United States to discuss efforts to secure his release. Avera Mengistu crossed over into the Gaza territory on his own accord back in 2014 and has been held by the terror group ever since. He had been institutionalized twice for mental issues for the 2 years prior to that. Yet despite his history of mental illness, Hamas refuses to return him to Israel. Now, Mengistu's family is pleading for help from the White House, and joining us from New York with more information is Shmuel Legesi, an Ethiopian Israeli community activist and educator. Thank you so much for joining us, Shmuel.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
So, will the United States truly be able to help secure the release of Mengistu, in your opinion?
Yes, the United States would have a lot of support and a lot of influence on this matter for international community, especially even the government of the United States, as well as the international Jewish and non-Jewish community have a great power and some kind of influence on this matter, because the Hamas, this terrorist group, hostage this mentally ill individual. He has no even any kind of army service, any soldier or anything. He's a civilian mentally ill individual.
Well, why is his family turning to the United States?
This is unfair.
Why is his family turning to the United States?
Because to make awareness for international community how Hamas holding this mentally ill individual, and the world doesn't have this news. These things, first of all, when it's happen at the first time, the news didn't go well, because it was a gag, it's order, not this information not to come out, and it was not really the international didn't get it well, and the international community didn't know anything about this. And also, this is international humanity, like cruelty, to hold mentally ill individual as an hostage.
Right. Now, so Shmuel, why hasn't Israel been able to secure his release? What is the issue here? We saw the Gilad Shalit exchange.
First of all, the current Israeli government, they really didn't do high effort like any other hostage in the past.
Why is that the case?
That also makes our community little unhappy on this matter. And but at this point, we see some kind of movement with Israeli government, like especially to bring the issue to the United Nations with Israeli UN mission, Mr. Danny Danon. He presents the matter with the family to the UN community, which also shows the Israeli government some kind of effort. But at this point, up to this point, the Israeli government really didn't do a lot of effort on this matter to release this individual.
Shmuel.
That's why this family have to go to international community to plead for this man release.
All right, Shmuel, thank you so much for joining us and telling us a little bit more about this case, and we're all praying for Avera. All right, now it has just been revealed that 3 Syrian rebels who were wounded last week in a chemical weapons attack are being treated here in Israel. Now, this obviously isn't the first case of wounded Syrians being treated in Israeli hospitals, but it may be the first confirmed one by the Jerusalem Post. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces have reportedly thrown an explosive drum containing toxic gases on Bardaya Hill, a strategic site in Syria controlled by rebels. The chemicals are believed to be chlorine, which has been used by the regime in the past. 3 Syrian casualties have allegedly been transferred to the Ziv Medical Center in northern Israel, but the hospital has not responded to any inquiries regarding their arrival. This particular attack is part of an ongoing offensive by the Syrian government and its Hezbollah allies to recapture territory near the Golan Heights. More than 3,000 Syrians have entered Israel for medical care in the past 4 years, and in early April, Intelligence Minister Israel Katz advocated for aiding even more children who were victims of chemical weapons attacks just like this one. Now, here is a shocking statistic for you. 84% of sex crime-related cases in Israel get closed, and it's usually for lack of evidence. That's the The report from the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel giving us a gloomy glimpse into the way the legal system handles sex offenses in general. The association will be presenting to the Knesset Committee on the Status of Women and Gender Equality today in an effort to address the issue. Over the last 5 years, there has been a 30% increase in the number of people turning to rape crisis centers in the Holy Land, which could be related to a faulty legal system. In 2016, over 4,000 sex-related cases were reported to the Israeli courts, but prosecutors only decided to indict 16% of the cases they handled. And among the cases closed, 69% were closed without any charges being filed. Yet the 9 rape centers that have put together this report say they received almost 48,000 calls last year, a major increase. Let's wait and see how the Knesset plans to answer to these stats. Following up with us today in the studio is ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh to speak more about a recent sex trafficking report that has been taking over social media.
Yes, well, in the past couple of days, Hollywood celebrities have taken to their social media accounts to share the story of a 16-year-old girl named Cyntoia Brown, who was sex trafficked and beaten. She was under the control of a man named Cutthroat, who was repeatedly drugging and raping her. She was later sold to a 43-year-old child predator who used her for sex. The post goes on to mention that she finally got the courage to fight back, shoot, and kill the 43-year-old who bought her.
And it's absolutely, it's horrifying to hear these stories. It happens every day. But every time you hear these stories coming out, it just seems so shocking when it really honestly shouldn't be.
Yeah, it happens all the time now. That's not even the most wild and unjust part about this whole devastating event. After she shot and killed the man who bought and used her for sex, she was arrested, tried, and convicted as an adult for her crime of killing her abuser. She has been sentenced to life in prison and will only be eligible for parole at age 69.
Now, like I said, this sounds outrageous, but it isn't an isolated case. And even here in Israel as well, which is very sad.
Exactly. You're right. This happens daily to so many young women. Actually, it's been reported that an estimated 3,000 women are trafficked annually here in the Holy Land. Women are brought to Israel for work in the sex industry, mainly brought from countries of Eastern Europe, where they're surrounded by severe poverty and unemployment. Most of these victims are women aged 18 to 35 and are frequently raped and beaten on the way to Israel. They're actually sold in public auctions for sums between $1,000 to $5,000. Most are forced to work 7 days a week for something like 20 hours. The women's passports are taken so they cannot run away or show ID. And these women aren't from this country. They live in inhumane conditions and face cruel, humiliating treatment. They have no clue about their local language and culture and are living in constant fear. However, over the course of the past 5 years, we have here in Israel have made enormous strides both in law enforcement and in new legislation which have tackled the problem head on.
Well, the hope is that cases like this that gain international spotlight will have an impact on the issue here in Israel as well, because there's clearly a lot more that the legal system needs to be taken control of. But thank you so much for joining us, Emmanuel. It looks like the Israeli army's commanders have a new toy to play with. The IDF has decided to equip every IDF commander with an eye in the sky. In other words, their very own personal low-tech drones. The small collapsible UAVs will provide immediate intelligence to the company commanders in the IDF's Infantry, Border Defense, and Combat Intelligence Corps. This intelligence was previously only available to special forces. Now, these mini drones can be used to map out common occurrences in the West Bank, like violent protests, in order to calculate how many people are coming and if more are on the way. Forget binoculars. The Mavic model is just over 1.5 pounds and fits in a little pouch that can be strapped to a soldier's leg. The Matrix, which is a bit heavier at 5.3 pounds, is still easy to carry, but it can stay in the air for twice as long as a Mavic and deal with much worse weather. Now, here's what's interesting though. These drones aren't military grade. The Army is actually buying the UAVs from a Chinese company called DJI. In fact, for about $1,000, you could actually purchase one of your own. Joining us now is artist Phil Ozz, who is using his artwork to delve into the future. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So I understand for the first time ever, you will be displaying your artwork in a gallery, correct?
Yes, it is.
So what are the themes of the work that you do?
Actually, it comes from my day-by-day activity. Every day doing consultancy and design for technology projects. And I took this to another field, and I feel like now I'm ready to do more art and more beautiful things. And it's when I do, for instance, in my works, the consultancy and design for projects in the city, like projects like Smart City, I travel a lot. I saw a lot of places, and then I took this view that I saw whenever I go to the canvas and make the design.
I mean, it's very interesting. You're using a lot of different mediums, it seems, and techniques, which is very, very cool. So, like you said, you're an artist, but you're also the CEO of a technology company.
Yes.
Can you give us an example and maybe one of the specific pieces that you've done that can kind of talk about how your work has impacted your art?
Yeah, you can see part of my work is an urban environment. Okay, and goes to take those pictures to the field of the urban environment and moving from those days to 2030. It's something that I put on the canvas. Okay, and also if you see the mosque, the painting of the mosque, that's what behind the social media. Okay, so I can say that right now we still talking face to face, but if you take it a little bit further, most of the people who spoke mainly on the social media. So my art goes to the urban environment and the social media behind the mosque.
Beautiful. So tell us when and where can we go and see this artwork?
The show starts this Saturday, 19 hours, in Galeria Ben Ami in Tel Aviv, Chashmal Street, and all of you are invited. I will be gladful to see you there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's beautiful what you've created here and very interesting, perspective of our current day society. So thank you so much for joining us. And viewers, check out his artwork.
Thank you.
A Dutch Israeli man is fighting for religious freedom in court in the Netherlands, but no, not the freedom to be a Jew. He may have been born Jewish, but this man actually identifies as a Pastafarian, otherwise known as the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Yes, you heard me right. This is a colander he's wearing on his head in his official Israeli passport photo. That's because Michael Avnasiev is part of a small minority who worship a flying spaghetti monster in the sky. Okay, that may sound a little loopy, but it actually comes from an old philosophical argument used to challenge organized religion and the existence of a god. You can't prove God doesn't exist, just like you can't prove a flying spaghetti monster in the sky doesn't exist. And get this, both the Netherlands and New Zealand recognize Pastafarianism as an official religion. That's why Michael's going to court, because his Dutch university won't allow him to wear his religion's holy clothes when he defends his dissertation for his degree. A pirate outfit. According to Michael, pirates are actually incredibly holy in Pastafarian ritual, and religious freedom means he should be able to wear the sacred peg leg and eye patch. Now, Israel doesn't recognize a Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, not yet anyway, but they did allow Michael to wear his holy colander for his passport photo. Any idea why colanders are holy? Well, because colanders are used to drain water from spaghetti. Duh. Now, here's a fun fact for you. If an Israeli offers you a handful of bagel, she's not referring to bagels. Bagel in Hebrew means pretzels, which are one of the most popular snacks over here. And joining us with a scoop on how Israeli bagel are taking over America is Gilad Zilberberg, the CEO and owner of Dream Pretzels. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, Gilad, your company has redefined the typical pretzel. Tell us what you offer here. We have a lot of yummy snacks on the table.
Okay, so what you can see over here, it's called Pretzels. It's a combine of press and pretzels. It's what we call in Israel shtuchale. And we actually developed the idea of a pretzel chips, taking all the pretzel and making something new, more crunch. And it's very challenging to make it without breakage.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because these are very thin, right? And
correct.
And there's some health benefits, because pretzels aren't typically considered the most healthy snack, right? But what is better about these?
So first of all, we are, as a company, we are doing only healthier and tastier. So we're challenging all the time how to make the product and the snacks, savory snacks, better and healthier, as I say. So first of all, we are in the pretzel, which is, as you say, better for you.
Yeah.
We are challenging with the sodium level, because this is the
that's
disadvantage
one of the main issues.
So what we did is reducing the sodium level big time in a few steps. And we can tell you we are the low sodium in the American market, all the North American market.
Interesting.
Yeah, so less sodium, but it's not to reflect the taste.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I mean, the sesame begale here, or pretzels as we call them, very popular here in Israel, typically in the US, ate with salt, but you have sriracha here. Sriracha pretzels. Well, this is my most exciting option here, I think. Everything, sesame, salt, and then for kids as well, right?
Yeah, lately we just launched, as I say, we are all the time. So we found out the Michelle Obama program for the school, which is, it was 2-step, and we decided to challenge and to go into this and making tastier product with all those criteria, which is very, very difficult. So it's 60% all flour, have to be very low sodium, have to be no sugar at all, and dietary
But you
fiber.
made it, you got in, right?
And we made it. The challenge is, so you got a product over here called Pretzel. This is direct for children, and it's much better than any pretzel you taste ever. And it also tastes great, and it's a great nutritional, and this is the only pretzel right now that can be sold in the US federal school.
Very cool. Well, listen, my friend, I think we've run out of time for me to try, but it's okay because I had a rough week trying grasshoppers in the studio. I had some Tubi alcohol, so I get to take these pretzels home with me. But I don't know about you guys. I'm excited to try this. Thank you so much for coming in and telling us about your products.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
Everyone's favorite British-Israeli comedian Sacha Baron Cohen is making headlines again for just being all around ridiculous, but this story might take the cake. Now, the star is pretty much entirely responsible for an absolutely revolting fashion trend on beaches worldwide. The man-kini. It's essentially a one-piece bathing suit for men that covers, let's just say, very, very little. And now Baron Cohen is, well, putting his money where his man-kini is because his little fashion trend just got some tourists in big trouble. So let's start from the beginning. The man-kini shot to popularity after his movie Borat, where he starred as a nonsensical reporter from Kazakhstan. According to the film, the man-kini is a typical bathing suit in the Central Asian country. But even though the movie's a comedy, a group of tourists didn't seem to get the joke. Last week, 6 Czech visitors got themselves into a major mess during their vacation in real-life Kazakhstan when they donned the Borat-style mankinis. They were fined about $67 each for indecency and, quote, minor hooliganism after making their way across the capital city Astana in the suits. Baron Cohen clearly thought the whole affair was great and has just said that he will cover their fines in a post on Facebook.
To my Czech mates who were arrested, send me your details and proof that it was you, and I'll pay your fine. Email address arrestedforwearingyourmankini@gmail.com.
Sacha Baron Cohen's hit movie titled Borat, Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan, was actually banned in the country because of its primitive portrayal of Kazakh culture. Back in 2012, however, Kazakhstan's foreign minister did thank Baron Cohen for helping boost tourism. And after this story, I think we can really say that he did.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. It may be winter already here in Israel, but you're still going to need to know this word if you visit. Beged Yam, which means bathing suit in Hebrew. Honestly, it's fair to say that here in Tel Aviv, the beaches are still full of people when it gets to what they call cold, aka 55 to 60-degree weather. So you can imagine why the Beged Yam, or bathing suits, are very diverse. For ladies, you have the average bikinis to one-piece Beged Yam, and for the men, you see everything from neon boxers to offending Speedos. And sometimes, if you're lucky, or cursed, should I say, you get to witness the king Beged Yam, the man-kini, otherwise known as the slingshot. Beged Yam. Now, when you see something like that on the beach, you can actually understand why Israeli lifeguards are in such a bad mood most of the time. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast on that note. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a chance of rain and a low of 54 or 12 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow is expected to be cloudy with no change in temperatures. The high will be about 67 or 19 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.52 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.